is a blessing from God.
You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. Good to have you guys here today. I'm excited about today's program because there's a gentleman that I've followed on Twitter, and I'm not a huge Twitter guy, but John Acuff's tweets they make me laugh, they make me think, and I really enjoy them. If you're on Twitter, I would recommend that you follow John Acuff and Life Today, and that's about it. So John has a new book, just came out, and we're going to talk about it. If you don't know who he is, he's sold tons of books. New York Times bestseller. His latest was a #1 book on the Wall Street Journal. It's called Finish. Give Yourself the Gift of Done. So he's a guy who kind of I'll get the description from him, but my impression is like this is a guy who just kind of helps you keep your head straight so you can keep your life straight. I don't know how accurate that is, but we will ask him. This is his latest book right here. It is called Soundtracks. And we're talking about a topic that I never would have thought I would talk about, and that is the idea of overthinking. I just hadn't thought about it, but we're gonna tell you what overthinking is, what it does, how to get rid of it, and we're gonna give you a lot to think about. So, John, welcome to Life Today Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Randy. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so correct me on my description of you when I describe you as someone who helps keep your head straight to keep your life straight. Is that anywhere close?
I think that's a great description. I should put that on a business card. I think I like to simplify complex things, and I consider myself a handle maker. We have enough ideas in the world. We just don't have handles on them to pick them up with us and take them into our lives. So I like to put handles on ideas so that people can actually use them. So Soundtracks is a handle on overthinking. You go, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can apply that. It's sticky, it's fun, it's relatable. So that's kind of what I think about my job.
That's an interesting job. It sounds fun. Sounds like you must observe people a lot, because I never thought of overthinking as really much of an issue. But as soon as I started looking through your book, I have someone very close to me that I was like, this is exactly where he's at, you know? Do you find a lot of people are in this place?
Yeah, it was funny. I think there's 3 things that you need if you want to have a speech or start a business or a sermon or a book. The 3 things that you look for. One is a need. Do people actually need this thing? The second is, do I have a personal connection to it? When it comes to a book, I'm going to talk about it for years. The third is there a spot for me in the marketplace? So for me, the need, I worked with a PhD named Mike Peasley. We asked 10,000 people if they struggle with overthinking, and 99.5% of them said yes. So the need was massive. And that was before 2020. 2020 was catnip for overthinking because right now everything is a thing. Like the other day, somebody I met went to shake my hand, and before they did, I thought, should I refuse? Should I fist bump? Should I turn at the waist and give them an elbow instead? Should I shake it and then immediately put my entire arm up to the elbow and do a vat of hand sanitizer as if to say, excuse me, while I scrub off this deadly pandemic you just tried to murder me and my grandparents with? And I started looking around the room. What does that say about us politically? Is this a political statement? Do you know what I thought 2 years ago when somebody tried to shake my hand? Nothing. I shook their hand, but now every part of life has all these extra thoughts. And so once I saw the need, once I kind of could piece together that I'd been using thinking in a certain way for my career for the last few years, and then I went to the marketplace, and everybody, when they talk about overthinking, says, stop it, stop it, stop it. And I thought, why would I ever turn off this amazing machine? I'm really good at thinking. What if I just fed it with thoughts that are helpful, thoughts that push me forward? A plane can drop bomb or food. A syringe can deliver medicine or poison. What if I could pick the thoughts that are good thoughts that propel me forward? What would happen? And so that's where I decided, okay, I'm going to invest the years in creating this book.
That's interesting. And, I get it with the pandemic because, it's new. We don't know what to do. This is not kind of normal. But outside of that, given that you surveyed these people prior to the pandemic, what would be some of the hallmarks of overthinking in an unhealthy way?
I'll give you three quick examples. If you've ever thought an idea was too dumb to write down, that's overthinking. Before it's even gone from your head to a piece of paper, you self-edit and go, no, every idea is worth a scrap of paper, 10 seconds of writing it down. But people self-edit, and we lose amazing art. We lose cures to diseases. We lose so many good things because people self-edit and overthink. Another example is if you text somebody and they don't text back quickly, and you tell yourself an elaborate story about why they're not texting you back. Are they mad? Did they misinterpret what I said? Should I have put more exclamations in there to let them know I'm light and breezy? Like, if I use as many exclamations in real conversations as I do in text messages, you would think I was screaming at people's faces constantly. A third one, if you're a leader, is waiting for all the information before you make a decision. We haven't lived in an all information world in 100 years. You'll never have all the information. You have enough information, and then you make a decision. So those are three really easy examples. The definition of overthinking, in my opinion, is when what you think gets in the way of what you want, where you know what you want. There's a goal, there's a desire, there's a hope, whatever, and all your thoughts get in the way. And people will sometimes push back on me and go, but maybe I'm just detailed. Maybe I'm just, I like to be prepared. That's great. The difference is being prepared leads to an action. Overthinking leads to more overthinking. And so if you come up to me and tell me, okay, I've been thinking about a book for 7 years, that's not how long books take. Like there's some overthinking probably at play. So that's to me the difference between I like to be detailed and organized and I'm stuck in overthinking.
I'm assuming you're not telling people not to think things through. Where's the boundary line where, and I get your examples, but at the same time I'm going, okay, sometimes I have an idea and it doesn't take writing it down or dwelling on it to know that it's probably not a good idea. So where do you have any, is there a sweet spot?
Yeah, it's 11 thoughts. Once you have no, of course there's not a number. What do you want me to say, Randy?
I don't know.
It's 7 seconds. No. So, but again, for that example, okay, it would take you 20 seconds to write it down. So if you go, okay, I would say take the 20 seconds, take that. No, of course I'm not telling people don't think through things, but there's a very big difference between being deliberate and thinking through something and getting stuck in overthinking and thinking thoughts that aren't helpful to you. So, an example of that would be, I teach people to ask 3 questions of their broken soundtracks. And what I call a soundtrack, it's a repetitive thought. And if you want to find out if you have a broken soundtrack, it's really easy. It's a 30-second activity. Write down something you want to do. I want to start a podcast. I want to start a family. I want to move to Dallas. I want to, read the Bible in a year. I want to give a speech. I want to lose 10 pounds, whatever. Write down a desire, then listen to your first thoughts. Listen to your reaction. Every reaction is an education. If your first thought is somebody smart has already done this, who are you to write a book? No one's going to be interested in that. You probably have a broken soundtrack. And when you identify that, you ask it 3 simple questions, but they're Trojan horse questions. They're simple words, but there's truth hidden inside them, and it's going to take you to a place you're not expecting. Number 1, is it true? Is the thing I'm telling myself about myself or this situation, is it true? Second question, is it helpful? When I tell myself that over and over again, does it move me forward to action or does it make me stuck? And the third is it kind? If I said it to a friend, would they still want to be a friend? So an example of that is I was on a podcast, and a lot of my podcasts that I've been doing, the interviews, the media, have turned into kind of these unexpected heart conversations. I would say the book is a heart book disguised as a head book. And so it's a nonfiction business book that all of a sudden you go, oh no. And I was on a podcast interview, and the host said, oh no. And I said, what? And he's got this really successful podcast. And he said, for the last 9 months, I've been the #1 podcast in my category. And the soundtrack I've been listening to and telling myself is, you're just lucky, you're just lucky, you're just lucky. He said, if a friend came over to my house and they said, I've been #1 in my category for 9 months, I'd never say to them, you're just lucky. So if I wouldn't say it to them, why am I saying it to myself? So those are the kind of soundtracks we're talking about. We're not talking about being deliberate. We're not talking about, being impulsive and you should have X amount of thoughts first. We're talking about the destructive soundtracks that get in your way, and then figuring out how do you create brand new ones that actually make you say you can do this. I had no evidence in 2008 I could be a public speaker or I could write a book. I had no proof of that. All I had was a single thought that said, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. And our thoughts turn into our actions, which turn into our results. And most people over-focus on their actions, and they never work on the underlying thought that's driving the engine. And so they yo-yo diet. They change something for a week. They change something for a month, but it falls back apart.
That's interesting. We're talking to John Acuff, and this is the book. You've heard him use the word soundtracks several times.
There's a subtle banner behind me. I don't know if your viewers can see that. I want it to be subtle. So we got a 9-foot bright yellow banner. It's right over my shoulder. I forget it's even there.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. So
Yeah, just looming over me right now.
I know, I love it. Let me ask you a question because I hear you,
Yeah.
and I have seen myself on both sides of that. And I think most people probably do. They can see examples where they
Sure.
went forward, they had, and then the examples where they kind of just spun. But sometimes I've lived long enough that I have followed that thought through, completed the action, and it seemed to fail. And that can really bite you from moving forward again the next time.
Well, I mean, I look at that and go, okay, so like an example for me would be I did a meetup, it was 2009, and I had this blog that was successful, and I thought, there's going to be so many people at this meetup. It's going to be so great. So I do the meetup. I bring like 1,000 stickers to hand out. Like, I'm really excited. I got this room at this event, and I'm there for 90 minutes, and only 2 people show up. And one is a friend who just came to say, like, good job. And the other one was a random dad who said, I don't read your blog. My daughter does. Here, call her. And I had an awkward 30-second phone call. And so even in that moment, which was a failure, there's no other way to describe, like, it was clearly a failure. In that moment, I had a friend take a photo of me amongst all the empty chairs, and I wrote about that later, and I shared that photo because I knew it would help other people and it would help me. So one of the soundtracks I listen to is I'll get a story or a success. Either it'll be a success and great, or I'll get a story. I'll get some sort of lesson. Does that mean right away after I fail, I go, oh, what's the vitamin in here? Of course not. There's times where I go, that was terrible. But yeah, life is too messy and too curvy to go, if I do this thing. I don't like when authors do that, where they say, if you follow this course of life, you'll have the exact same results I had. No, you won't. It's going to be different. But I do know that the times when it's not, I don't get the result I want, then I have an invitation to learn something about how I did it, about myself, about was it the right thing to even try. So I always try to look at that and go, okay, I'm going to get a story or a success. It's going to be one of those 2 things.
Yeah, that's good. That's a healthy way to look at it, and it's so true because I think C.S. Lewis said so much of what we learn in life is via negativa. It's from things that don't work, Yeah. And I've done that, and my wife's like, that didn't work, and I'm like, well, now I know what not to do, and
yeah,
that can
cross
sometimes,
that off.
right? I mean, sometimes that is just as valuable as knowing what to do. So that's interesting.
100%.
Now you have a lot of music. I mean, we got soundtracks. You talk about things on loop in your head. You talk about developing a new anthem. What's with the music connection there? I'm curious where that comes from.
Well, I mean, I do live in Nashville, so
Yeah,
it's impossible not to have music kind of flowing through your conversation. My next door neighbor is Chris Tomlin's guitar player for 20 years. My other neighbor is Todd Smith, who's in this band Selah.
Yeah,
so
I know
there's, like I could hit a musician with a baseball from the room I'm sitting in probably. So I think there's that, and then also there's a lot of studies, and I talk about one of them in the book, that the music you hear consistently becomes a part of your life. It becomes a part of your playlist. And I thought that's a really interesting parallel to the thoughts you listen to over and over and over again. Because the more you listen to the thought, the easier it is to hear it again. There's a reason a mom can be 5 minutes late to the car ride pickup line and think, I'm the worst mom. It's because it's not the first time she's thought it. She's heard that song 1,000 times. And even though she got the kids ready for school, even though she worked a full-time job, even though, she did everything that day, 5 minutes late plays that song again. So I just feel like music has a powerful place in our lives, and so do the thoughts we listen to.
Yeah, I get it. I heard a song on Spotify last weekend that I don't know. It's been decades since I've heard it, and I knew all the words.
Yeah, of course. And you probably, you remember often the times the first time you heard it and where you were, or, it gets locked into a memory. And I think the same is true of those repetitive thoughts we have.
Yeah, I literally told my wife, Casey Kasem's top 20 back in about 1983.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of course, she looks at me like I'm weird, but then she does the same thing. So, all right. So if someone is kind of connecting and they're going, okay, yeah, I do that. But they don't really know how to break out of it. It's easier said than done, I guess is what I'm thinking. have you? Does there? I know there's no one size fits all secret formula, but there's got to be some kind of underlying. Your 3 questions are good. I get that. I guess I'm just looking for a real hook for people to go, okay, this is my path out of the problem that he's just identified.
Yeah, I mean, what we learned in the research, what the book is ultimately about is 3 things: that you retire your broken soundtracks, you replace them with new ones, and you repeat the new ones until they become as automatic as the old ones. And different people have a different challenge with each step. Some people, retiring is easy. It's like there's been a lot of parents who have purchased the book for their kids, for their teenagers. And that's fun because a teen will believe truth quickly and they don't have to unlearn old stuff because they haven't carried around the old stuff for 20 years. So the retiring thing for them is different. Replace. Some people go, you know what? I have these 5 thoughts, or I know how to do that. Or my friend always tells me this statement, and it's really encouraging and it really inspires me. So I can replace that old one with this new one. And then the repeat thing. Some people are really good at the repeat, but yeah, it's a process. But here's what I would say. There's times when a single thought can change everything almost automatically. And I'll give you an example. If you have a difficult coworker, someone you just don't get along with, you don't understand them, you're constantly fighting with them, and you find out his wife has cancer, knowing that idea changes everything. Yeah. Suddenly, everything is different instantly. On the other hand, there are times when people will take a brand new new thought and they'll put it up against this thought that they've been broken for 10 years and it's been doing push-ups in the prison, gym yard. And they'll go, it's just not working. And that's human nature. I meet people all the time because I talk a lot about goals. I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal. I write books ultimately about goals. This one's about the goal of thinking. And they'll say, John, this diet's not working, or this exercise program's not working. I'll say, how long have you been doing it? They'll say 10 days. I'll say, how long did it take you to gain the weight? They'll say 10 years. So you gave the problem a decade and the solution 10 days. How unkind to the solution. So one of my soundtracks is never give the problem a year and the solution a week. So there's times when you have to go, okay, I have this new thought. Yeah. And it's not easy because it matters to me. It's worthwhile. Nothing of worth is ever instant and easy. I'm going to work at it. I'm going to practice it. And there's going to be times where I have to remind myself of this truth 10 times that day or 100 times that day. But over time, that's going to help me deal with my overthinking. So yeah, I'd love to say this is the one thing to do, but I don't trust people that tell me that. I think there's very few silver bullets in life. Right. I want there to be. I do. I really do. But I know I haven't written 7 books because I found a silver bullet to writing. Unfortunately, the way you write books is you write books, and you write a lot. And I write 200,000 words to create a 50,000 word book. And I go, that's so inefficient, but that's how I do it. That's the process. And so, yeah, I wish there was a silver bullet. And if somebody has one, if one of the viewers has one, email me or hit me up on Twitter at John Acuff. There's no H in John. Oh, okay. Yeah. And you can see that right there on the website, which is acuff.me. And that's where his podcast is as well. So you can find all his handles and different socials. Have you studied the idea, I think the scientists call them neural pathways? Yeah, and I get into the book a little with neuroplasticity and our ability to change, which is exciting because our generation knows that. My parents' generation didn't know about neuroplasticity. Their parents' generation thought it was good to smoke cigarettes in the Tour de France because the nicotine opened up your lungs. And so they would smoke during the Tour de France on the hills to open up the capillaries. So every generation learned something new. And that's a big part of why I wrote the book, because again, stop overthinking is an okay message if you don't know about neuroplasticity. If you know that your thoughts can change the physical structure of your brain, then you should do everything you can to deal with your thoughts and create the kind of thoughts that change it in a healthy, positive way. That was the first chapter or 2 talks a lot about that. The cool thing I found about that is that we've known, I heard many, many years ago from a guy who was trying to help people at a Fortune 500 company that I was working at stop smoking. And I didn't smoke, but I was listening to him anyway. But he talked about how quickly we can develop habits. And with the nicotine, there's a chemical thing going on, but it takes, like you said, a while to undo the habit. But, and I think this goes to the neuroplasticity, at first it's discipline. And after a while,
you don't even have to think about it. It just becomes a part of who you are.
Yeah, you can't imagine not doing it.
Yeah.
Eventually, it becomes almost like a knee-jerk reaction to the situation. You know, okay, this is when I do this. And what's fun about that, I mean, my favorite study that we put in the book, at NYU, they did a study where they took two groups of college students into a room, and they said, we want you to make sentences out of these words. They gave them a word bank, a bunch of words. And one group had normal words. The other group had normal words, but they had hidden words related to being old in there. Words like slow and retired and bald. So they have them make sentences. And then they say the second part of the test is right down the hall. Please walk down there. And that was the real test. The real test was they secretly timed how long it took them to walk to the end of the hall. And the students who had been just exposed to words about being old physically walked slower. It's called the ideometer effect. They walked physically slower because they had read the word old and tired and Florida and bald. And they've reversed the study 100 times. And it's fascinating how powerful our thoughts are. And the challenge is most people don't think they get to choose them. Most people think a thought is something that shows up on its own and we have no power of it. Or they make an even bigger mistake. They assume just because they thought it, it's true. And so once you give somebody the permission to choose their thoughts and then some actionable steps to do that, it's really fun to watch those lives change.
Oh, that's cool. I guess my wife and I, who we're now empty nesters as of May.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's actually pretty awesome. It's a lot of fun. But there's something we've been saying. I think maybe I need to quit saying it. And that is, man, we're old. I'm 51. I mean, you know.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's not helping you. That is not.
And you know what?
No.
I've noticed, you know, I get a little tired a little earlier these days than I used to, which is
yeah. You'll start to. So with cognitive bias, I mean, you know how cognitive bias is. Your brain wants to believe the things it already believes. So the more you say I'm old, your brain will go, no problem. I'm going to find examples. I'm going to catalog examples of this statement.
Right.
So then I do notice, wow, I forgot that thing. Oh, that's because I'm old. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, that's because I'm old. Oh, I don't connect with the younger generation. Oh, that's because I'm old. Whatever the thing is, your brain will go, no problem. I'll go find you some proof.
I say that I've got more money than ever. It's because I'm old. I don't have the expense of my children. That's a good thought, though. All right. So what has been the reaction? Because it's been out a few months. I'll show the book again here in a second. But the book's been out, soundtracks, talking about overthinking. And so you've had a little bit of time to get some reaction from people. What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, I think that for a lot of people like myself, it's surprising. I was surprised doing the research how many of my thoughts ended with "you idiot." Like when I stopped to listen to my thoughts, a lot of them, if I'm honest, ended with "you idiot." Like if I hadn't performed something, if I had done it well, but it could have been better. Like, so I think a lot of people, when you get them to think about their thoughts, will be surprised how negative they are. And then they get excited to do something different with that. Where I've been surprised also is how many companies have said, wow, we want to change the soundtracks we listen to. Because all culture is in a company is a group of soundtracks people are listening to at the same time. And most of the time they're accidental. They don't have them on purpose. And so I've had the good fortune of going into companies and saying, okay, here's how you change those soundtracks, especially mindset. I mean, the mindset conversation is really popular right now because as people return to work and leaders have to figure out how do we repair the culture that's been damaged, like there's been cultural damages from people being isolated. You miss 100 micro interactions when you're not in the same physical space with somebody. Yeah. You miss the casual lunch, you miss the pop-in. And so they're saying, how do we get people back into the mindset of working together, back into the mindset of building something all together. And so that's been really fun, is to see the corporate application or the team application.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. This is the book right there. Soundtrack's available now. You can go get it. Before I let you go, I have to ask you about the podcast, Acuff.me. For people that want to check it out, what are you doing there, and what are you talking about? Who are you talking to? I saw one of them. You're a big fan of Alone.
Yeah, love that show. Greatest show on television, in my opinion, especially if you like grizzly bears. The podcast is called All It Takes Is a Goal. And so I explore different ways to accomplish goals. If somebody was like, okay, what episodes should I start with? There's one where I interview a woman named Colleen Berry, and she lost her job in the .com bust back in 2001. She was a documentary filmmaker, had to take 4 or 5 other jobs to piece together a living. One of them was as a receptionist at a company. And she decided, I'm going to change my mindset. I'm going to change my soundtracks. And she worked really hard, and she's now the CEO of the company. Wow. And so she went from receptionist to CEO. Really fun story. The other one was I interviewed Greg Sankey, who's the SEC commissioner. Football, not not, money. I don't know what I'd ask the securities person. And Greg Sankey, his leadership through COVID, because the entire sports world was watching what the SEC did for their Qs. And to see him lead through that and then lead through the multi-billion-dollar Texas-Oklahoma situation, joining the SEC, he's incredibly humble. He's incredibly focused. During the week when Texas and Oklahoma was announced, he sent me a thank you note. And I told my wife, look at this. This guy's in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar negotiation, and he sent me a thank you note this week. Like, even somebody at his level, and she said, you got it backwards. He's at that level because he does stuff like that. And man of God, he carries a card in his wallet with 5 books on it that he thinks everybody should read, and the 5th line is blank, so he can write a new one. And one of the books is Ecclesiastes. So he's strong man of God, great faith, but a fantastic leader. So I'd go listen to one of those 2 episodes. I think people would really enjoy it. It's called All It Takes Is a Goal. You can find it everywhere.
Very cool. And I do want to ask you, since you mentioned faith, and by the way, the name key that you guys just saw watching out there, there's no H in John. Pardon on the on the name key. But you've spoken. I mean, the list of companies where you've spoken is impressive. I mean, we're talking Nissan, Microsoft, Lockheed Martin, Nokia, Comedy Central, FedEx. What I know you don't go in there and they don't bring you in there to evangelize.
No.
But
I'm not a pastor though. I'm not in the same way that, like, my heart surgeon, you better crush at being a heart surgeon.
Yeah.
Like, if at any point he goes, hey, I'm going to put these tools down for a second and Romans road you. Like, no, dude,
Right.
I need you to be an amazing heart surgeon.
Right.
So no, I write nonfiction business books. So I go in there and go, okay, how is FedEx going to crush their goals this year?
Gotcha.
And so everything you read of mine, I think if you're a believer to go like, yeah, this is Proverbs. Like, yeah, this like there's no part of me that's like, yeah, God had some good ideas, but I found better ideas. Like, no. So I think if you're a believer, you go, oh yeah, there's a lot of this stuff that I recognize because it's based in truth. But no, I write, I sit on the business shelf. I would, you could say, if you're using old school language, I write secular books. But yeah, corporations are my favorite place to be and speak because they're filled with people, and they're often filled with people who are going, okay, how do I change this? How do I grow this? How do I improve this? And that I can't wait for live events to come back. The last year and a half, super challenging. If you're a public speaker, like I think everybody on some level experienced some degree of change in their career that they just thought, okay, it'll be over by April. It'll be over by the summer. It'll be over by the fall. We just keep moving the goalposts. It's been challenging.
But I got to say that I really like what you do because I believe that we need more Christians in what we think of as secular business, not to, preach the Roman road of salvation every time their mouth opens up, but to build those bridges, to establish those relationships, and to impart the wisdom that is from God, but not everybody necessarily knows it at the time. So I think what you do is actually very cool.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that, Randy.
Yeah. Anything I missed? I want to give you opportunity. Anything you want to
plug?
Sure.
Last thing I'd say, if you're like, the book sounds interesting. I'm not a book person. I'm a video person. Check out soundtrackscourse.com. It's 6 videos shot by a company in Dallas, right outside of DFW. So as Randy's backyard. But yeah, soundtrackscourse.com. It's kind of a 6-week exploration of it. So if you go, you know what, I'm not going to pick up a book. There's an audiobook too. I read the audiobook. I would say that I have twice as many people listen to the audiobook as I do the digital book. I think that's, a book is the last single function task, and a lot of people are loving audiobooks. So I think we're going to continue to see that grow. But if you're an audio person, check out the audiobook. If you're a video person, soundtrackscourse.com.
Awesome. And I'm with you. I'm an audiobook guy every day driving to and from work, and it's wonderful. So I'll have
it's the best. Do you fast forward it? Do you listen to faster speed?
No, I don't do that. I just finished a G.K. Chesterton, and now I'm doing James Joyce, read by an Irishman who has a very thick accent. So I don't know if the fast forward will work real well.
No, dude, no. But that's like anytime I hear somebody that has a British or an Australian or Scottish accent, I'm like, oh man, I wish that is money. It's such a benefit. That's one of the things I do lack. I don't have a cool accent. I think a lot of people agree with that.
If you'd have told me, man, I would have started the interview that way.
Yeah, that could have I would have believed it. I've never talked to you before. I'd be like, maybe this guy's Scottish. Like,
Irish.
Nobody says that in a bio. Irish, whatever. You're from the UK.
No, all right. We won't go down that road. Free Ireland. Republican man. That's the argument.
Yeah, if I get a lot of IRA hate from this interview, that'll be the first time, and I will take that, with a grain of salt. If that's your listener, if your audience base is IRA terrorists, I'll be like, well, you know what? They didn't put that in the bio. When they asked me to be on this show, there was no mention of that.
Such a stereotype. They're not all terrorists. Anyway,
yeah, now I'm gonna get even more.
I think you're safe.
Yeah,
I think you're
good.
safe.
Yeah,
John, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Randy. It was a fun way to spend a day.
Appreciate your insight and your sense of humor. So the rest of you guys out there, it's a great time to hit share if you haven't already. If you need to rewind it, you can do that. Check us out all the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, Lightsource, and come back tomorrow. Check out acuff.me. Looks like this. We'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.